You know that nagging, persistent pain on the outside of your ankle? The kind that just won't go away? You might chalk it up to a simple sprain. But what if the real culprit is hiding in plain sight? Well, today we're diving deep into a really common, but often missed, source of ankle trouble: peroneal tendon disorders.
Now, you might be thinking this is some rare, obscure issue. But check this out. A full 4% of all ankle injuries among professional football players involve these specific tendons. And listen, if it's happening that often to elite athletes with top-tier training and care, you can bet it's a major player for the rest of us too.
So that's the big question, right? What in the world are these critical yet super injury-prone parts of our ankle? Let's get into the anatomy.
Okay, so think of your ankle as having its own high-tech stability system. And the peroneal tendons, they're basically the stars of that show, keeping you balanced and secure with every single step you take.
To put it simply, just picture the peroneal tendons as two strong, kind of elastic cords. They start from muscles up on the outside of your lower leg, run all the way down, and then wrap snugly around your outer ankle bone before they anchor into different spots in your foot. And yep, there are two of them, and they're a team, but they have very different jobs. You've got the peroneus brevis, that's the shorter one, and it attaches to the outside edge of your foot. It helps you turn your foot outward. Then there's its bigger sibling, the peroneus longus. It takes a much longer journey, diving under the foot to help support your arch. They work together, but as we're about to see, they face very different kinds of risks.
And you can see right here just how elegantly this whole system is designed. This is an MRI, and it shows the tendons perfectly tucked into a little groove behind the fibula, which is your outer ankle bone. They're like guide ropes on a tent, constantly making tiny adjustments to keep your ankle stable while you walk, run, or jump.
But what happens when those guide ropes start to fray or even snap out of place? Well, that's when all the trouble begins. And these tendons, they tend to fail in three main ways.
So the problems really fall into three buckets. First, you've got tendinopathy, which is just a fancy word for the tendon tissue itself degenerating. Second, you can get actual tears. Think of a rope starting to split. And third, and this one's pretty dramatic, is dislocation, where the tendons literally jump out of that groove we just saw.
Let's start with tendinopathy. This is way more than just a little inflammation. We're talking about chronic overuse causing the very structure of the tendon to change. Those healthy, firm, white collagen fibers start to break down. The tendon transforms into this dull, kind of grayish, swollen, and really painful version of what it's supposed to be.
Now, when we talk about tears, one of these two tendons is definitely the prime target. The peroneus brevis, the shorter one, is just in a tough spot. It's literally getting compressed between the harder peroneus longus tendon on one side and the fibula bone on the other. It's stuck, which makes it way more likely to develop these painful splits along its length. And wow, this slide really gives you a powerful look at what we're talking about. On the left, that's the MRI. It's the clue that something's wrong, showing that split inside the tendon. But then on the right, that's what the surgeon actually sees in the operating room: frayed, unhealthy, damaged tissue that's causing all that pain. It's a huge difference between the scan and the reality.
Okay, the third problem is dislocation, and this one is pretty wild. Imagine a little safety harness made of tissue that holds those tendons perfectly in place. That's called the superior peroneal retinaculum. Well, a sudden, violent twist to the ankle can actually tear that harness and snap. One or both of the tendons pop right out of their groove.
Now look really close at this X-ray, right at the tip of that outer ankle bone. You see that tiny little fleck of bone? That's called a fibular sleeve avulsion fracture. It might not look like much, but it's a huge red flag. It means that safety harness we just talked about was torn away from the bone with so much force that it actually ripped a chip of bone off with it. It's a classic sign of major instability.
And here is what that dislocation looks like up close and personal during a surgery. You can clearly see the peroneus longus tendon, that's the L, and it's completely out of place. It's supposed to be tucked neatly behind the fibula bone, which is marked with an F, but instead it's just sitting on the side. This is the very definition of an unstable ankle.
So, with all these hidden injuries causing so much trouble, how in the world do doctors solve the mystery? Let's take a look at how they figure this stuff out.
It's really like a detective's toolkit. It starts with a hands-on physical exam, where a doctor will move your ankle around in specific ways to see if they can trigger the pain or instability. X-rays are key to rule out bone problems, like that little fracture we just saw. But the heavy hitters here are the MRI, which is amazing for seeing damage inside the tendon, and a dynamic ultrasound, which is super cool because it lets the doctor watch the tendons move in real time to actually see if they're popping out of place.
So here's the good news. Once a proper diagnosis is made, there are very clear pathways to recovery. The treatment can range from simple conservative stuff all the way to some pretty advanced surgical repairs.
For the majority of tendinopathy cases, and even some of the smaller tears, surgery is not the first stop. The first step is to just calm things down. That means rest, maybe a boot or a brace to keep it still, and then physical therapy to build strength back up. Oh, and it's really important to note that steroid injections are usually a no-go because they can actually weaken the tendon in the long run.
So what happens when surgery is needed for a bad tear? Well, a really common procedure is basically a cleanup and repair job. It's a three-step process. First, the surgeon carefully removes all that frayed, unhealthy tissue. That's called debridement. Second, they stitch the good, healthy tendon that's left back into its normal tube-like shape. And finally, they fix that safety harness, the retinaculum, to make sure the tendon stays put for good.
And here you can see that first step in action. The surgeon has found these multiple splits inside the tendon. It looks just like a frayed rope, right? All of that damaged stuff is exactly what needs to be carefully cleaned out.
And here's that critical final step. After the tendon itself is all cleaned up and repaired, the surgeon meticulously stitches that safety harness, the superior peroneal retinaculum, back down to the bone. This is the crucial reinforcement that keeps the whole system stable and stops the tendon from ever popping out again.
What's really cool is that this isn't just about what one surgeon does in one operating room. The entire global medical community is working together on this, trying to establish the absolute best standards of care for these injuries.
This quote from a big international group really nails the challenge they've been facing. What it's basically saying is that for a long time, there wasn't one single best way to fix these problems. That meant your treatment could be totally different depending on which doctor you saw. So these experts got together to look at all the evidence and create guidelines to help make treatment better and more consistent for everybody.
And that leaves us with a really hopeful question to think about. As our science gets better, as we understand these little tendons more, and as experts from all over the world team up, are we heading towards a future where that chronic, mysterious ankle pain isn't a mystery at all, but instead it's just a solvable problem? That sounds like a pretty promising future to me.